Hi all and welcome back. We'll start our next session of the day, which is from Gurugram chapter on neuroplasticity to accelerate change adoption by Manish Parsi. He is a change and digital transformation leader at Wipro Limited. But before starting onto the session, I would like to thank our founding sponsor, Innovation Roots, which is a leading consulting and training service provider, helping organizations to achieve business agility and beyond. It is one of the leaders and pioneers of niche publishing services and well known for content collaboration with global thought leaders, authors, and creators. For more information, visit www.innovationroots.com. I would also thank our sponsor Agile, which is a product offering from Tata Consultancy Services Limited. It's a purely cloud-based enterprise agile planning tool along with DevOps capabilities. Enterprise can use Agile up to adopt agile practices for uh, or scale across multiple Scrum and Kanban teams using enterprise scaling frameworks such as SAFe, Discipline Agile, Less, and more. You can try out Agile for free up to 20 users or for 30 days by signing up at agile.io or reach out to us for any inquiries or exclusive product demo. Check out the Agile page on Agile Network India for more information. Here are some quick do's and don'ts for the participants. Join the event 5 minutes before the start time. Use high quality speakers or headphones for better sound quality. Please keep your microphones muted and videos disabled as this may cause disturbance and bandwidth issue. Questions will be taken via the chat box. I request all the participants to put their questions onto the chat box. At the end of the session, if the facilitator or the moderator will help and read out a few questions to the speaker as per the time available. Please fill in the feedback forms after the event to help us understand more about the event management. We appreciate your cooperation. With this, we'll start our session for the day from Gurugram chapter. I request Prashant to come on microphone and camera, who will be facilitating this session.
Welcome everybody. Uh, Welcome to the last session of the day. So today we have Manish Parasi, who is a head of change and digital transformation for banking and financial services. So he is talking on behalf of the Gurugram chapter, Agile Network India Gurugram chapter. So change being the norm, I feel this is one of the very most relevant and interesting topic which we are going to hear. Neuroplasticity to accelerate change adoption. Manish has authored around six books, and with this, I would like to hand uh, over to you, Manish.
Sure.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Manish.
Prashant. Thanks, Prashant. Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Okay, so as Prashant mentioned, I think change management is one of the primary focus areas for everybody. So I've been into this area of digital transformation and all kinds of transformation. So what I've realized with my experience is that any success in any transformation program is largely about people. Not how quickly you can change people, how quickly you can make them adopt change will be the result of your success. Tools and technologies is important, but I think it's people who are more significant. So this today's session will be more about talking an application of neuroplasticity, which is a brain science, and how it can be used to drive change faster. So how I've structured this session is that I would take an individual, which is you. So you take it, whatever discussions we are having, you see it from your frame of reference, that how would you actually adopt some of those things? What is it that goes through your mind? Because if we are able to understand ourselves well, then we can actually look at how do we change others. So that's the call out I would make here. So I'll have a quick story to tell. Uh, there was we all know that there was a war in 1971 between India and Pakistan, which India won. But there was a situation in that war that one of the Indian generals, he lost his way and he was being chased by enemy soldiers. So he lost his way and he was being chased by enemy soldiers. So he just ran and he entered a tailor's shop in the city of Dhaka. And he told this tailor that, see, tailor, I am an Indian general, army general. We are winning the war, but I have lost my way. And I am being chased by enemy soldiers today. So please help me hide and you will be rewarded. Now this tailor was confused. He said, thought that what should I do? But then he decided that let me help the general. So he asked him go and hide in one of the almirahs he had inside his store. And he said just be there without making any noise. Just be there and I will handle it. So the general hid himself in that almirah. And so the enemy soldiers came to chase him. And they asked the tailor that have you seen an Indian general? He said no. So they tried to search the vicinity. They even knocked at the almirah where he was hiding, but they didn't open it, and eventually they went off. So finally, the Indian soldiers came, they rescued the general. India won the war. We all know the story. So now this Taylor thought that now he will be rewarded because he has helped the general. So I think he thought I will be rewarded. So he went to the general and asked him a question that, hey general, how did it feel being so near death? Near Now, General said, you Taylor, how dare you ask this question to a winning general? And he said, told his soldiers, go and kill this Taylor. Now, this Taylor was shocked that, what wrong did I do? I just asked a very simple question. Why is he overreacting? So he told General, but General said, nothing doing, just told his soldier, go and kill him. So the soldiers took him out and they put a gun on his temple. And when they were about to press the trigger, General said, stop. And then he went to the tailor and he told him, this is how it feels by being so near death. So now, why did I tell you this story? It is because all the session that we'll have today, it will be more based on you going back and experiencing it for yourself. Because if we just keep listening to the concept, they would look very good, but unless we apply it, you will not really feel that. Now imagine had the general told the tailor that, oh, it feels very scary when you are near death, you sweat, there's a lot of things. Taylor wouldn't have been able to relate to that extent. So general made him feel that, so now he will never forget what is it being near death. So it's all in these sessions. What is different is that how we try to experience what we are actually learning. So with that, let me get into first the concept of neuroplasticity. So let me try to demystify what neuroplasticity actually means. So what is neuroplasticity? So to put it simply, it is the ability of the brain to change itself continuously. And the rewiring which happens in our brain is a result of neuroplasticity. So let me tell you that all of us, when we were growing up, I think most of us were told that our brain is static, that your personality gets formed at the age of 5 or at the age of 7, and after that nothing happens and all that. But that has been proved to be wrong. You can at any time in your life actually learn new skills, develop new competencies, and there is nothing called as static brain. So that's why we say that brain is plastic. It can be molded, it can be changed anytime. So the rewiring which is happening in your brain is the smallest unit that you have in your brain is the neuron. A neuron is nothing but a mechanism to carry on the information from the brain to different parts of your body. So that's how it works. Whenever there is a pain, a signal gets sent and brain sends it back to the hand, or even if you're moving any part of your body, like I'm moving my hand. So there is a communication happening between the brain and the body part through these neurons. Now there was a famous scientist called Hebb who said that neurons that fire together wire together. You will understand this, what this means. So what happens when we indulge in a particular behavior? Let's say we have a way of doing certain things. For example, we wake up every morning and we drink coffee. So that is the behavior that we keep repeating. So what happens is that when we repeat a behavior, the neurons that are responsible for that behavior, they start establishing a connection between themselves. And as we repeat a behavior, this connection becomes stronger, or you can imagine it getting thicker and thicker. So when something is so strong, it becomes very difficult to change. So this is what happens. As we repeat this behavior, these bunch of neurons, by firing together, strengthen their connection with each other. And The strengthening of the connection, we call it, that is known as hardwiring, that this behavior is hardwired. So when we find somebody very stubborn, not actually listening to our point of view and all that, it is means that he has hardwired certain things. Like there are certain assumptions that the person is living with. So hardwiring is all about, as I mentioned, bunch of neurons connecting basis the way we live our lives. So this was the scientist, neurons that fire together, they wire together, which means that if we repeat a particular action, particular behavior, that gets hardwired in our brain, and that is how our habits and personalities have been traditionally formed. Now, with this background knowledge, let's understand what is happening in organizations of today. Now, we want to change. We have implemented a technology. Let's say we were in the previous session talking about Agile. Now, we want why people, it's so simple, it's so powerful, why people are not really adopting through the Agile ways. Sometimes we ask this question. So, now with this background that you heard about neuroplasticity, let's look at what is happening in the organizations. So, how do we program our brain? So in a typical workplace scenario, 95% of our thoughts, our talks, and our talks, this is sorry, error, our thinking basically are the same on a day-to-day basis. So if I go to the next slide. So what happens when 95% of our behavior is same? We are only strengthening our old habits, our old paradigms, our old way of doing things, and our old ways of interacting with colleagues. So for example, we wake up every day, we have that set schedule of looking at our calendar, working on our tasks. We have a same way of talking to people. We have the same reactions in meetings. We speak the same way. We repeat the same thing. So what happens actually is that it is getting hardwired. So no new wiring is happening in our brain. So if you remember what we talked about neuroplasticity earlier, so there is no new wiring which is happening in our brain at that time because of we repeating these behaviors the ways that we have been used to. And sorry, this slide navigation. So yeah, so how do we program our brain now? Our brain gets programmed with what we speak, feel, think, and do on a moment-to-moment basis. So this is the key. So whatever we say, it's programming our brain because we understood that our brain is plastic. So neuroplasticity is actually programming us for future. So whatever I'm thinking, doing today, it is creating my future in a way. Because if I keep repeating what I'm doing, speaking, talking, interacting, it is strengthening that connection in my brain. So that is how our personality gets shaped. And since we have, as we have seen in these subsequent slides, that 95% of what we say, feel, do is same on a day-to-day basis. So we strengthen our old habits, old paradigms, and as a result of which, no new wiring is happening in our brain. So that is why it becomes very difficult to actually change. So now, what is the way out? So now we know why change is difficult. So let's look at some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves. So as I mentioned that try to relate this to you first, and then you can actually, once you understand, build that self-awareness, we can actually look at spreading how do we change others. So there are typically these three questions that you need to ask ourselves, yourself. What information, impression, feelings, thinking I am feeding my brain related to a proposed change? Let's say a proposed change in your organization is, for example, moving to a agile ways of working, or you have bought a new platform and you need to work on that, maybe change the ways of working. So how are you actually talking about that change to yourself? Look at that. What feelings I get when somebody says change this way of working to this? What is the feeling that I get? What impressions I am getting? So you need to get more conscious about it, because the reason I am asking, I tell you to ask these questions is because a lot of this programming in our brain happens unconsciously, even without our awareness, because we are habitually doing something, so we don't really think about it. It's like brushing my teeth every day. Now, how many of you think that what you are doing, okay, I'm putting a paste on my, I'm doing this motion? Nobody. So you just do it. And if you have been driving vehicle for a long time, hardly you think about it. It happens unconsciously. So similarly, a lot of things at the workplace happens unconsciously. So whenever anybody proposes a change or you hear about any change, the typical reactions, now when you ask these questions, you stop. Oh, this is what I am doing. That is why these questions become important. So the second question is, what impressions related to proposed change is getting formed in my brain without me being conscious about those? Now you understand neuroplasticity. Now you have answered the first question, that this is, for example, if you're telling yourself, oh, this change is bad, yeah, it will spoil the way I've been used to working. If you're constantly feeding yourself with this, so your brain is forming a hardwire related to that. So it is building your resistance to that. Now you can extrapolate it to your people in the organization, that why, what could be happening, because the information they are feeding themselves, impressions, feelings, actually are creating this kind of a program in their mind without their conscious awareness. So the third final question, how can I stop acting on my traditional ways of handling problems which create a feeling of being stuck? Now here with this question, now you are starting to look at breaking your pattern. Now, if you have always been reacting to any change, like your first reaction is always of resistance, then you can actually now get more aware of, okay, so this is my traditional way of handling this situation, this problem. So now let me think about different ways. So this is the first step towards actually starting on any change, that you are becoming more self-aware. So these questions are some of the things that you can maybe start with yourself, and then look at how you can extrapolate it to people. Now, there are certain workplace practices. Now, what causes us to build certain impressions about any change in the workplace without our conscious awareness? So, what are some of the wrong practices that we may be doing unconsciously to uh, program our brain differently? So there are certain practices which cause wrong kind of wiring. By wrong wiring, I mean that something which is resistant to any change. Which so this wiring actually keeps us in our comfort zones and make us continue to maintain status quo. That I am happy with what is happening. So I am in my comfort zone. So by looking at these practices, you can figure out which ones you are indulging in. So I'm talking about something which we'll see on the next slide. So some of these practices you see if you are indulging in any of those, or you can think about your workplace, that are my people actually practicing any of this. So understanding these practices actually would give you a very good self-assessment and self-awareness. And self-awareness is a essential before you start engaging in driving change to a larger group. So let's look at some of those practices which cause these wrong wiring related to change. So first is not challenging the status quo. Now just look at, are you habitual of working in a certain way and you are happy with whatever comes your way? Okay, I will do. Somebody asks you to do something, you just accept it and you do it. And whenever there is somebody asks you to change, there is some resistance. Like you don't want to actually come out of the status quo. And also look at the work that you have been doing for past 2 3 years. Is it same, similar, nothing has changed? So this means that I am not challenging the existing practices, my existing ways of working and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Is there anybody who wants to ask a question? Okay. So not challenging the status quo. Actually, now if you relate it back to neuroplasticity, what we learned, that neurons that wire together. So if you're not challenging the status quo, what you're doing is you're strengthening what you have been doing. So your connection in your brain is becoming stronger day by day. And the more you don't challenge the status quo, the harder it becomes for you to change in future. Now apply it to anybody in your organization. If you find people very stubborn, then it means that possibly they don't have this habit of challenging the status quo. Other wrong practices could be having preconceived notions about leaders, people, business heads, boss who propose any change at the workplace. Now, what I mean by that is that, like, I'll tell you my example. In one of the organizations, I always felt that my boss is out there to get me, that he is interested to just see that I end up having some trouble. So that was my strong preconceived notion. So whatever good thing he will tell, I would perceive it with that lens. No, no. So once he told me that he is putting my name in a global project, and so please just go ahead. So he thought I put your name because it will be good for your career. Now my impression was that now he's putting me in this project because this is a risky project and he knows that it will fail and I would be chunked out of the organization. Now, this is a preconceived notion, strong. And all of us have these preconceived notions about people, leaders, that now they are there to get me, they want to eliminate some jobs, whatever. So, if we have these preconceived notions, then it becomes very difficult to actually view the change as it comes to you with a neutral lens. So we always wear a lens of prejudice, a lens of bias. So just see if you are indulging in this practice, or any of your people whom you want to change leaders, do you think that they possibly are doing this? Then third cause could be living the not invented here syndrome. Now this is very typical. Uh, Now, if you allow me to use a Hindi sentence, people just say, "हमारे यहाँ ये नहीं होता है, ये नहीं होता है." No, and in English, just translated, it doesn't happen here. This is some other organization. We are used to working this way. We have always been doing this way. So whatever new concept, let's say for example, you're talking about agile. No, it will not work here, and they will give you 20 reasons why it will not work. This is why. This is why, and this is the perfect way to resist something. That ये it will not work in our place, ये हमारे यहाँ नहीं चलेगा, यहाँ ये चल ही नहीं सकता, this cannot work here. So not invented here syndrome, that's also a big. Then blaming and complaining, which is very, I think I can relate to it very much. And this blaming and complaining typically happens over tea. It used to happen when we had the pre-COVID world. We go out for a tea with somebody and the job it starts is about cribbing, complaining. So can we go for a tea break? So tea break is a actually a ideal mechanism to blame and complain. So what happens now? Now go back to neuroplasticity. If, for example, I have this habit of blaming and complaining everything that I see. No, this is a nonsense. This ERP adoption, this agile, this is not. This will create a lot of challenges. We will lose our job. Client will get dissatisfied and all that. Now this organization doesn't understand. It doesn't have a vision. So if I'm always blaming, complaining, what is happening is that my blaming behavior is getting hardwired. It is getting thicker and thicker, and without my awareness it will become part of my personality. Now you will see that whatever comes your way, you always have a tendency to blame or complain. ये ऐसे हो गया, no, this person has done that, they have done this is wrong, they are wrong. Again this gets hardwired. So these are like some of the very strong behaviors in the workplace which make people more resistant to any change. So that is how you look at it, that they're hardwired for these behaviors, and this becomes the biggest obstacles in front of them to change. So now, with this understanding, and you now know neuroplasticity, so let's look at how you can solve for this. Now we have understood the problem statement, that because of neuroplasticity, the behaviors that we saw in the previous slide are something which cause maximum resistance to change. So let's also look at how you can take advantage of neuroplasticity. So I'll just take you through the practice mindfulness. Now, mindfulness, all of you know, we understand is breathing deep, remaining in the present, like all meditation practitioners tell you, be mindful. But what it means in practice is being conscious about what is feeding your mind. Now, in the previous slide, we saw one behavior is that complaining and blaming. Now, complaining, if you have been doing it for a long time, it has become part of your nature, personality, and you will not even know that you are indulging in that. So, when we say practice mindfulness, is that you consciously tell yourself, I want to change this behavior of complaining. So, what will you do is you become more aware that what makes me complain. Now, so you might identify what is the trigger. So you will identify the trigger. What triggers this complaining behavior in me? So I'll take example of one of the persons I coached. For him, complaining was because of whenever somebody asked him to do something which he didn't like which was not his way of doing. Any suggestion that actually triggered his complaining behavior. And since he was a chronic complainer, it became deep part of his personality. So after being mindfully identified this trigger, that whenever I have this tendency to complain, I will be conscious about identifying when people disagree with me or they ask me to do something which I am not comfortable with. So he said that I will identify this trigger, and my behavior is that I just start complaining, I get upset. So what I will do is that when I hear this, I will not repeat my old behavior. I would either walk away or I will just take a deep breath without replying. And I would then maybe respond, tell myself that I don't need to complain. So this is like basically mindfulness is that you become aware what you want to change, you become aware of the triggers and you practice something else. So what happens in our brain now, neuroplasticity, because when you don't repeat a particular behavior, the connection that has become so strong starts to get weaker because you're not using that now and you're using something else, some other behavior you are using. Let's say if it is taking a deep breath whenever you hear that. So this behavior, old behavior is getting thinner and your new behavior, which is taking a deep breath, getting thicker. So with mindfulness, again, you can take advantage of neuroplasticity that you can strengthen your new behavior and you can weaken your old behavior. Now, second way is indulge in possibility questioning. Now, what creates resistance is that we are always asking wrong questions. How this can harm me? How this can be not useful for me? How is it risky for me? I'm talking of any change. So, if you are asking these kind of questions, then you will get answers which will make you feel more bad about change. So in possibility questioning means you ask about what is possible. Now, say for example, any change comes your way, you say, what are the opportunities that I have with this change? So what additional benefit I can derive out of it? What are the upskilling possibilities that I have? So ask those possibility questions about the change, and again, you will start to strengthen your new way of thinking. So your neuroplasticity, your old way of thinking is resisting this new thing, getting scared, afraid, asking wrong questions. But your new way is that you are asking possibility questions. So the answers that you get would be more empowering and the old behavior, new behavior gets strengthened. Now link strong emotions to outcomes of change. Now, how many of you will remember your first job or your first day at your college, your day of marriage, maybe day of your childbirth, the day you got your life partners, whatever, any significant event. How many of you would remember? If I can just quickly see a raise of hands, how many of you remembers these events very clearly? Okay, I assume most of you. So Prashant, yes. So the reason is because there are long, strong emotions associated with that. Because your first day at job, your first child, your marriage. I know on the day itself it was an emotional event, positive emotions. After that, I don't know, but still it is a strong emotional event that you have had in your life. So reason is that whatever you want, this change, if you are able to link your emotions to that change, similarly to people's change, that what is the benefit that you will be getting. So if somehow you are able to trigger emotions, then again your wiring would get strengthened related to that. So this is another method that can be used. You can ask yourself, what is it? Why do I want this? For example, what is in it for me? And what kind of like how will my life improve? So same thing, you can show people the light that if you do this, what is it that you will gain emotionally? How will you will feel good, you will feel more empowered, your career will grow. Something which appeals to their emotions is that you can trigger through this. Fourth way is break down change into chunks means small steps. Now on a foggy day, if you say that I will not drive my car till I see the entire way. No, it doesn't happen that way. When you start driving in a fog, you can just see a little bit ahead, and as you drive, the entire way comes in front of you. Similarly, if somebody tells you to climb Mount Everest, like if you are into hiking and you said just climb Mount Everest, so it will appear to be huge. So if you break it down into steps, let's say going to the base camp first, then to the next peak, then it becomes more and more. Like you set your milestones on a small. So look at seeing how you want to break the change that you want your organization to have into small steps, which will not be a major effort for anybody. Now, related to yourself, let's say if tomorrow you say, I want to become healthy and I want to gain a very fit body, and you say that from tomorrow I would exercise for 1.5. Now, your mind, your brain will resist that. Oh, 1.5 hours. Maybe let me start from tomorrow, not today. Let me postpone. You will keep postponing. But if you tell yourself, I will start from tomorrow with 5 minutes of exercise. So, huge probability, huge chance that you will do that 5 minute of exercise and you will end up doing more. So, five is to break that barrier that you have in your mind. So, that's how you break that change down into steps. That's how you have those ladders climbing to the terrace, because you go step by step. That makes your brain more acceptable to change. So think about it. Any change you are driving for yourself or the organization, break it down into steps. And finally, repetition. Now you all know neuroplasticity is all about repetition. The more you repeat something, the more powerful, strengthened it gets. So these are some vital activities that you can do to take advantage of neuroplasticity. So there are many, but for the since we have a small session today, I thought we'll touch the most significant ones, which are very practical to implement immediately. So now let me also cover another concept on this part, which is story of Jack. Quickly, that Jack was a person like he attended a training program once, and in that training program there were some new ways of working which were told that which he can implement immediately on the job. So the session was so inspiring for him that he got very excited that this is something I would implement. Wow, this will be great. So he felt very great after this. He attended a week's or 2 day workshop. So he got very empowered and he went to his workplace very excited to make that change. So on the first day, he tried to do something, but then there was a lot of backlog since he was away for 2 days. So there was a lot of backlog of emails which was there. So he thought, let me answer these first, and then I would come back to the things that I've learned. So as he started replying mails, he got into the groove. There were two escalations, so he got into deeper resolving those and all. And every day, so actually, he got again engrossed in what he was doing. And at the end of 1 week, he had lost all motivation to do any change which he was so excited about after attending the workshop. So this is what happens with each one of us, that when we are hearing something for the first time, or which is very inspiring, or which hits us very hard, we feel we want to do that, but slowly the motivation level goes down. Now why does this happen? Now this also lies in a the reason also lies in our brain. So there are two types of changes which happen in our brain: a chemical change or a structural change. So when in the case of Jack, when he was in that workshop, when he was hearing new things, new concepts, new ideas, so he was getting very much excited because there were a lot of hormones which were getting released in his brain. So there was a lot of chemical changes happening. His new neurons were firing in new ways, and this hormonal change, this chemical change in his brain was making him very excited about it, inspired about it. So this is what happens. But these chemical changes actually, if you don't do about that, what happened to Jack was after 2 days he didn't do anything for 1 week because he got lost in his day-to-day job. So this chemical change, as fast as it comes, it's also very fast, it subsides also. So lasting change comes when a sorry, structural change happens in your brain. By structural change means that wiring that we talked about, that becomes stronger. So unless you drive structural change in a brain, the change will not be lasting. So now you can understand that why so many training programs which are very exciting when you are in those, actually they lose their impact after some time. Now if you go back, you will realize that why they lose it, because after that workshop or after that program, we fail to take much actions towards that. So the key here is that repetition again. So you need to look at ways in which you can make those structural changes, because chemical change will take you from this level to this level. Now to remain at this level, you need to continuously do something, at least some tasks every day, so that you are able to strengthen those new connections which got triggered when you were there in the workshop. So that is what happens. Like what we, for example, if you are implementing any change in your organization, new ways of working, or a new package which has come, or agile ways of working. So you might see that in the session, these guys were so excited about when they said yes, yes, as if they will implement this from tomorrow. But now what has happened? We are back to square one. Nothing is happening. So the reason is that we need to actually make people do something. One is immediately after the session, and also on a very periodic basis there has to be strong tasks that we need to do, we need to give to people, or need to do ourselves, like if you want to make those change. Because the key for any lasting change is that it should lead to structural changes in your brain. That is it. So in the last part of the session, I would look at what's the way out for this. Now, are there some ways in which we can lead to structural changes in our brain? So I will talk from three concepts based on extensive research which has been carried out in brain science, which has been implemented in organizations. So some top three techniques. Part of it we have already discussed a little bit, but first and foremost is imbibe and propagate a growth mindset. Now, if you guys are familiar, there are two types of mindset. One is a fixed mindset, second is a growth mindset. Now, what is a fixed mindset? Fixed mindset is when I believe, for example, that my skills, my knowledge, the way I work is decided. It is static. I cannot learn new skills. If I am an expert in waterfall method or agile ways, if I am an expert in RPA, I am an expert in RPA only, for example. I cannot learn new skills and new technologies on new platforms. If I go learn for learning, that is not my cup of tea. So that's the fixed mindset. Now in today's world, what we need is a growth mindset. So to understand growth mindset is being more flexible about you, that I need to adapt. I can learn new skills at any time. There's nothing which is impossible. Now I'll give you this example, pandemic. Pre-pandemic, how many of us imagined that this model of working from home will be, we can actually move to that model? Because in pre-COVID times, it used to be a challenge. Work from home for one day, people used to struggle not getting approval and all that, because it was a strong belief in everyone's mind that this cannot work. Work from home means low productivity, nothing. But when this change happened, all of us to that, and there have been so many new discoveries that happened. So actually, the world, including us, have practiced the growth mindset in the last 1.5 years of this pandemic. So even I'll tell you the deals, large deals that we have closed in my organization over these calls, which was not accepted before. Nobody thought it's possible. It is believed that you need to have a face-to-face personal connect before closing a large deal. No, but all that has been gone for a toss. So a lot of these paradigms that we have in our mind related to fixed mindset is actually our perception only. All of us are capable of adopting a growth mindset. So growth mindset is that I'm open to learning, I'm open to new things, and there is nothing which is impossible. So that is what I propagate. So that's the growth mindset. So if you are able to induce this mindset in your people, in yourself, then it leads to structural change in the brain. Yes. Okay. If you repeat this to yourself, yes, this is very, not just theoretically repeating, learn new skill, I can learn new skill, but actually going ahead and doing something about it. Let's say picking up a new technology platform, new methodology, and actually learning, doing something. And as you learn, you will realize that it's not rocket science. You can actually go ahead. So same thing happens with any change. If you are able to induce growth mindset, change will happen faster. Now build supporting habits. Now habit, you all know what is a habit. Habit is a traditional way of doing things. So habit can be broken down into three things. One is the trigger, second is my behavior, and third is the reward that I'm looking at. Now behavior. Let's look at the concept of how a habit is formed. So what is it? If somebody has a complaining behavior, so the trigger, we learned that trigger could be that anybody disagrees or any new change is proposed to that person. So what is the routine the person follows is that, okay, I start complaining. Now the key is that the person is looking for some reward in that. Now the reward through complaining which the person gets is, if you go deeper, as I've asked few people and discovered even for myself, is reward is the boost to the ego. That, oh, I have somewhere vented out what I was feeling to somebody. Somebody has heard. Now I am back to that. No, I cannot do this. This is my way of working. What you're proposing is wrong. So that's how, that is the reward. So now if you have to break this habit, you have to ensure that the reward which the person is looking at, he gets from his new behavior also. So the trigger could be same, that anybody disagrees with the person. The new behavior could be that, okay, I will take a deep breath. Now you have to link it back to the award. Now, how will you boost the person's ego? I'll tell you a practical way. Every time the person actually doesn't repeat his complaining behavior and follows a new behavior, he makes a tick on a chart that today, one tick, I controlled my old behavior. Second time he does, he makes a tick. Today, two times I controlled my behavior. I adopted a new behavior. Tick. Again, he three. So this is again giving him that comfort. Oh wow, I am successful. I can manage myself. I can pick up this new thing. So again, that reward which he was looking at, ego boost, he's getting now in a different way. That he has a lot of control over himself. So when you are building these supporting habits, just you'll have to dig deeper for the reward. That what is this behavior? What is the reward this person is actually looking at from this? And this needs some time because it's very subtle. Now, ego boost, nobody will tell you, but you'll have to identify that possibly this. So once you know the reward which the person is getting through the old behavior, you can then link the new behavior in a way that the person gets the same similar reward. So then you can actually build those supporting habits, taking again advantage of how your brain works. Now the final thing is ability appeal to both left brain and right brain. Now what is left, right? We all know. Left brain is the logical brain and right brain is the, you can say, more creative side. And I will call it as the emotional brain. So I'll give you a metaphor for this. Imagine a rider and a elephant. Now rider in Hindi we call it Mahavat, somebody who rides the elephant. Now imagine that these there is a elephant and there is a rider on top, and you want, and you tell them that please go to a place which is 1 kilometer away. Okay. Now the ride, and you tell the rider that if you go to that place which is 1 kilometer away, that will be a good like it will be good for the elephant. It will be good for you as such. Basically, it will give you more control over yourself. Something like you tell something and which you hit the rider. So rider is ready to go, but now the elephant decides, no, I will not go, and the elephant sits down. The elephant says, no, I will not go. Now rider and elephant have to go together. Now if the elephant decides not to go, then rider cannot really go, even if he's logically convinced that the place which 1 kilometer away is very good for me and this my animal. But the elephant doesn't want to go, so they cannot go. So now the rider is your left brain, which gets convinced with logic, and elephant is your right brain or the emotional brain, which gets triggered with emotions. Now, if you have to make the rider and elephant go to that place, you will have to trigger emotions in the elephant. Now if you tell elephant maybe something, that bunch of bananas, you are able to tell the elephant that, imagine that elephant understands you, that 1 kilometer away there is a huge, you can say, trees full of bananas, all fruits and all, which he will get for his life. Now the elephant will be convinced because he also wants to go. Rider was anyways convinced. Now they reach the destination. So in any change management situation, what we predominantly do, we target the left brain or the rider, the logical side. Our communications, emails that we go send through the CEO, all the leaders we send through, the talks that we give, the training programs are all focused on logic, telling why this is important. Now it also has to hit the elephant or the emotional side of change, because that is what will trigger more changes. So these three are powerful research-based techniques which can lead to structural changes in the brain, and you can actually lead change in yourself as well as the organization. So finally, well, I know this time. How do you apply this quickly? First is that if you have captured few techniques, apply them on yourself first, record and observe the impact. And with this experience that you will gain through individual practice, now you can brainstorm ideas on how to apply this neuroplasticity at your work with an objective to accelerate change adoption. And the key is how will you induce structural changes in people, because that will be the key to drive the change, not only in yourself but to the people. So that is what I had for today's session. So be glad to have your questions. If you have any queries, you can write to me on my mail also.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Manish.
so Prashant, I'd open it
Yeah,
for questions.
thank, thank you, Manish. Yes, we have a couple of questions. Uh, Swatantra Jain asks, how can how can we get our brain wired for the role position we want to be in?
Role position you want to be in. Again, one is just try this, see how you can trigger your emotions for that role. One is logically you want that, I want that role. Now how will you trigger is that you answer the why. What will you get when you reach that role? Maybe look at what triggers your emotion. Maybe you are getting a higher salary, position in society, maybe more respect in family, in your circle, something, whatever triggers your emotion, just list that down as your why. This is why I want this role. and and also, yeah, so one is that. Second is visualize it strongly, because once you know the emotion, just close your eyes and see yourself already in that role. Now, because picture works magically. Now if you visualize and you feel the emotions that I have reached this and this is what I am getting, your progress towards that will be faster. I hope the question gets answered.
Yeah, I hope Swatantra got his answer.
Okay.
Okay, we have another question from Amruta. Uh, change your uh, change your neuroplasticity plays significant role in adapting the change. However, it takes time for brains to form new wiring, and sometimes organizations want immediate results because of the competition in the market. This is the challenge many of us have. Any suggestions to handle this?
Yeah, Amruta. So I think the last part which I talked about, we can have more discussion on that. The elephant part. See, what is missing out on changes that we are always talking logically. So I'll tell you one example which we had in one of the organizations I was working. So there was we used to handle retirement for the sorry, the healthcare part of US employees. So for us, there was we were managing the edits. Edits means that you somebody requests for any request somebody has, let's say for adding a dependent or medical claim. So are we able to process that on time or delays? So our objective was to make that responsiveness 100%, which was at 65%, which was very low. So now we used to tell, so if you raise it from 65 to 85, this is the benefit you will get. Participant, those satisfaction of those people. So all logical changes we were doing. But then eventually what we said, we traced two stories. One was of a medical claim request of a person which didn't happen on time, which led to delay in that person receiving a dead body of his patient, of his family member, because he couldn't pay because the claim was not processed on time. Second was adding a new dependent, like a newborn baby, to the medical list because the baby was born with some ailments which need to be immediately rectified. So insurance, the name need to be added in healthcare insurance. So these are some examples. So similarly, we picked up real stories of. So what we see is one transaction that you process this transaction on time. That is logical. But what is the people or the emotion or the behavior? What is how is it impacting people? So when you are able to showcase this, it triggered so much that people worked around 24 by 7 to ensure that they don't delay any request. and we achieved that 100% result very quickly. Our plan was that let's take 6 months. It was achieved in 1 month because of that. So just think about to your situation. How, what are the ways in which you will be able to just trigger people's emotions, because that works wonderfully fast. So I hope Amruta, you got
Thank,
some ideas with that.
yes. Thanks a lot, Manish. I think with this, I think our time is also we are bang on time. Yeah. So on behalf of the Agile Network India community and everyone, I would like to thank you for sharing such insightful session. Thanks a lot.